The 1790s were a time of hope and struggle in the young United States. After securing independence, farmers across the western frontier were building new lives, relying on their crops and livestock for survival. For many, whiskey was more than just a drink. It was a livelihood. But when the federal government introduced a new tax on whiskey, it sparked an uprising that would test the very foundation of the newly formed American government. This was the Whiskey Rebellion, a defining moment in United States history that demonstrated the reach of federal power. To understand the roots of the Whiskey Rebellion, it's important to look back at the Articles of Confederation, which was the United States' first government. Under this original framework, the federal government was weak, with limited power to raise funds, enforce laws, or support a military. The lack of centralized authority led to chaos, debt, and instability, ultimately proving the Articles ineffective and a failure. In 1789, the United States adopted a new constitution, a new type of government. This new government was a more centralized government with the authority to raise taxes and regulate trade. This shift aimed to stabilize the nation financially and politically, but it also meant new challenges and new controversies. The new government and country was facing a serious problem. It was drowning in debt from the Revolutionary War. President George Washington and Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton were desperate to raise revenue to pay off the debt. Hoping to tap into the popularity of whiskey, Hamilton introduced a federal tax on distilled spirits. The tax was set at 7 cents per gallon, which was a significant amount for small farmers, especially since whiskey typically sold for about 25 to 50 cents per gallon. For small farmers in the 1780s, whiskey was a crucial product. Whiskey allowed them to convert their surplus grain into a stable, easily transportable, and often very profitable good. Whiskey also served as an informal currency on the frontier, enabling farmers to trade and purchase goods. On the western frontier, cash was scarce, and trade was often done through barter. Hence, whiskey was its own form of currency. For farmers in the western frontier, this new whiskey tax felt like a betrayal, a slap in the face. They saw it as an unfair burden imposed by wealthy politicians far away in the cities. To make matters worse, the government required distillers to pay the whiskey tax up front before they sold their whiskey, which was difficult for the small farmer. Protests spread rapidly. Farmers organized meetings, refused to pay, and soon began to escalate their resistance. By 1794, these protests had turned violent. Mobs tarred and feathered tax collectors, attacked federal officials, and openly challenged the government's authority. This open defiance reached a peak in western Pennsylvania, where resentment boiled over into a full-blown uprising. In July, nearly 400 whiskey rebels near Pittsburgh set fire to the home of John Neville, the regional tax collection supervisor. President George Washington faced a difficult choice. This was one of the first tests of the new Constitution, and the nation was watching. Would the government have the strength to enforce its laws? At the urgings of Secretary Hamilton, Washington organized a militia force of 12,950 men and led them towards western Pennsylvania, warning locals not to abet, aid, or comfort the insurgents. The display of federal power sent a clear message. The government would uphold its laws. As Washington's forces approached, the rebels disbanded, and the rebellion collapsed without any large-scale conflict. The leaders of the rebellion were arrested, though Washington later pardoned them, aiming to show strength tempered by mercy. The Whiskey Rebellion left a lasting legacy in American history. First, the federal government demonstrated its authority to enforce laws across all states, setting a precedent for a unified national policy. This response sent a powerful message. The United States government could and would use its power to uphold federal law. Second, The rebellion clarified the boundaries between federal and state power, strengthening the role of the centralized government created by the Constitution. Finally, the rebellion deepened political divides. Hamilton's Federalist Party supported the tax and a strong central government, while Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republicans sympathized with the farmers' resentment and warned of government overreach. These tensions would evolve into America's first political party system. In the end, the Whiskey Rebellion was not just about a tax on whiskey. It was a defining moment that shaped the federal government's authority in the young United States and raised concerns about the power of a strong centralized government.